Well, the Falcons open up camp in 9 days for rookies and veterans. All eyes will be on that new quarterback, Kirk Cousins. New head coach Raheem Morris felt like the team was one piece away from being a playoff contender, so they signed the former Vikings quarterback to that 4-year, $180 million deal, even though he's coming off a torn Achilles. New offensive coordinator Zac Robinson was asked about one of Cousins' top playmakers, Kyle Pitts, and he said this: he's learning basically two different positions. There's some tight ends, some wide receivers, so he's got a lot on his plate. He's handled it really well. I'm just excited to see him continue to get more comfortable in the system. We'll move him around the formation. We'll use him as a blocker. We'll use him as a receiver. We'll use him all across the board. Back here with everybody, Tim, Pitts is one of those guys who could really blossom. We've been all waiting to get in the right offense. Do you like what Robinson is pitching right here?
I do, quite a bit. And look, I think that's what most good coaches try to do with really good players, is don't, just kind of have them, oh, hey, you're a tight end. You're going to line up right here all the time. You're going to run tight end routes. We're going to use you as a tight end. Just think about how some of the elite tight ends have been used in the past and are currently being used in the National Football League. Look, Jimmy Graham, when his contract was up, his agents were trying to say, no, he's not a tight end. He plays more receiver than tight end. I think Kyle Pitts is that type of player where, look, you got to move him around. You have to use him different ways. And I think that, it's just smart of Zac Robinson to say, all right, look, who's some of our best football players? How do we get the most out of them? And I think moving Kyle Pitts around is probably the best way to do that.
I think he will benefit greatly from Zac Robinson and, of course, from Kirk Cousins, the quarterback change, not just because of Kirk Cousins' overall level of play, but the specific ways in which Kyle Pitts is talented. First of all, people forget, his rookie season, he was incredibly productive. It was not that long ago. And he was particularly productive on throws that Kirk Cousins excels at, particularly throws over the middle of the field. I still remember Kyle Pitts catching crossers, taking them for tremendous yards after the catch. In fact, on in-breaking routes that season, he had the most EPA per play of any tight end, second most yards, only behind Mark Andrews. Kirk Cousins loves throwing to that part of the field. So to me, it's a good match of quarterback and player, and I think Zac Robinson will put him in a position to succeed.
I think people forget, Mina, that because it hasn't gone well, Kyle Pitts was the fourth pick in the whole draft. The next two guys picked were Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle. So at some point, somebody in Atlanta believed this was a potentially game-altering playmaker. And in terms of skill, I think that's what he can be expected to be. He was dealing last year with a knee injury that required an operation after the season ended. And that obviously limited him. And the quarterback play obviously limited him. That's why there's a new quarterback. That's why there's a new head coach. I think Kyle Pitts and Drake London, another top 10 pick, are expected to be able to create and win, mismatches at whatever part of the field that they're able to use them. And whoever's open, I think Kirk Cousins will be happy to make him the team's leading receiver. It could change game to game. I do think you'll see Bijan Robinson, the running back, another top 10 pick. I think you'll see him in much more of a workhorse role than you saw last year. He has that capability, and I think the Falcons are at a point where they're ready to start trying to maximize the value of these top 10 picks that really haven't blossomed the way they imagined they would.
Yeah, and I'm glad, Graz, you brought up that he was a top 5. He was a superstar of Florida, and keep in mind when we talk about a little bit of Kyle Pitts, Cousins targeted tight ends the fourth highest rate during his last 2 years in Minnesota. Potentially more opportunity for Pitts in this offense. Finding that guy to stretch the field across the middle could open things up down the field for Drake London. All right, led the Bucs to a playoff win. The former #1 pick has found a home on his fourth team, and Tampa rewarded him this offseason after his first Pro Bowl season with a 3-year deal worth $100 million.
Tell you what, you're having a lot more fun when you're not getting shipped off to different places like a piece of dirty laundry. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So when I got embraced in Tampa, it made a world of difference. And I've always played ball is enjoy it. I mean, it is a game. Yes, it is my job, but I love it so much.
It's remarkable where he's at and how he's found a home, and also landing that monster deal considering where he was in Carolina and then where he was getting ready for 2 days for playing for the Rams against the Raiders. So Baker gets this new deal to stay in Tampa thanks to that new contract in the offseason. But there are a lot of new faces running this offense. Graz, remind us of the changes for the Bucs there.
Well, the offensive coordinator is the big one, right? Liam Cohen comes in from the Rams, to replace Dave Canales, who's now the head coach in Carolina. And now Baker Mayfield and Liam Cohen know each other. I don't know how many people remember Baker with the Rams toward the tail end of the 2022 NFL season. So he's operated in that offense and actually played pretty well in it in spite of having zero time to learn it. So I think they feel like that'll be a good match. But yeah, it's worth watching. Obviously, Canales was able to get something out of Baker that his previous couple coaches weren't able to get. The Bucs, they were in run it back mode this offseason. They wanted to re-sign Mike Evans, and they did that. They wanted to re-sign Levante David on defense, and they did that. Extend their young guys. Antoine Winfield, they did. Tristan Wirfs, they're working on. So the Bucs feel like, hey, we've won this division 3 years in a row. There's not really a lot we need to change, and their hope is that Baker's able to roll with what did.
I think the consistency in terms of the personnel, knowing the guys, the familiarity in the building that Baker will have, I think will be big for him. It's a great point on Liam Cohen in terms of their experience with one another. And I think that, Cohen doing things that, quite honestly, Baker is pretty good at doing in terms of just that style of offense. I think that's really the type of offense that Baker needs to be in. I would just say this, just kind of outside the X's and O's for Baker. I think one of the things that's made him unique is there's always kind of been this chip, this edge to him whenever he's played well, when he's felt like he's really had something to prove. And I think that, to do what he's done in terms of bounce around 4 different teams, all that, and then get a big deal, that's not easily done in the National Football League. That is really hard to do. But it's because of that edge that he has, and I think it worked in Tampa. Okay, well, now you've been rewarded. Now you've been paid. Now you're the guy that everybody is looking at and knows the team is invested in. Like, do you still keep that edge? Do you still kind of lead and play with that grit and determination? That, I think, is critical for Baker.
I think one thing that might help is, despite the fact that the Bucs won the division, they're not the favorites to win this year. The Falcons we talked about earlier are perceived as a stronger team, so maybe he can play that to his advantage in terms of being doubted again. I liked that they kept him. I really liked what I saw from him last year, and I really liked that a lot of those pieces are still in place, aside from the change at coordinator. One of the kind of underrated storylines of this the Bucs season last year, was that the offensive line played much better than the season before in pass protection, and they invested further in that, drafting an interior offensive lineman, Graham Barton. That's so crucial for Baker Mayfield, who plays so much better from a clean pocket, but he also helped himself out, getting the ball out the quickest of his career. And that's really, I think, what's going to be so key for Liam Cohen as he takes over this offense. How do you keep Baker playing quickly, using him as a point guard back there? That, to me, was so fundamental to his success last year and will be key to his success this year as well.
You guys talk about consistency, too. Keep in mind, Cohen will be Baker Mayfield's 8th offensive coordinator in his 8-year career. Stability is so key for him in Tampa. We are seeing that. Kellen Moore, NFC East, returning, headlining a wholesale changes there to Nick Sirianni's coaching staff this offseason. Changes that didn't come easy for the Eagles head coach. Look at this quote here from Nick Sirianni saying, quote, "I won't lie to you that the idea was hard, but I knew with my gut that was best for the team, and I see a lot of positives from it. I'm able to see things from a 30,000-foot view. That doesn't mean I don't have opinions on what this should look like. You do what's best for the team because you love the team, not because you love your selfish reasons of what you want. And I really feel good about that." Let's bring back Mina. With all the additions that they've made and the changes, specifically the playmaker and adding Saquon Barkley here, what should this offense in Philly look like this upcoming season?
The million-dollar question. One would think that the run game would still have a lot of the same DNA as it did before, partly because it was still really effective last year, and you've got Jeff Stoutland, best offensive line coach in football, as your run game coordinator. What I'd like to see is an evolution of pass game. You mentioned Saquon Barkley. Can they use him as a weapon there? Exploiting the mismatches they'll see at linebacker when he's on the field, for example. They already have a robust RPO package that they can include him in. Can you give Jalen Hurts answers versus the blitz, which plagued this offense so much? And then, again, about the passing attack, while you have incredible playmakers at receiver and tight end, too often last season it felt like they were saying to them, hey, go win. Can you help them win, whether it's through motion to give your quarterback information and create leverage advantages, or can you use formations and personnel groupings in a more creative fashion? These are all the challenges that Kellen Moore faces going into next season to avoid making the same mistakes they did last year.
Feels like Brian Johnson was the fall guy in this decision here, Tim. And when you hear the offseason, the quote from Jalen Hurts that 95% of the offense is different under Kellen Moore's offense, what do you expect to see?
Yeah, and I think that probably relates to the passing game, Kevin, because I think everything that Mina just said about like the things you can do with Jalen Hurts, things that he's been successful doing, whether, in college and then in the pros, I think a lot of that stuff will continue and stay the same. But it's Kellen Moore's creativity in the passing game, exactly the stuff that Mina was just talking about in terms of, all right, formationally, are you giving yourself an advantage? Are you gathering information because of emotion? Are you doing things that are better than just saying, all right, hey, because we have a quarterback that can run and they're playing man, hey, go win outside and complete the throw. Like, I think that will help him develop as a passer.